Welcome in, everybody. Michigan State Spartans live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Ryan Elke, and we are episode 12, kicking off this show pretty strong. And we finally have real things to talk about because we are closer to actual football being played. This week was Big Ten Media Days. That means Tuesday, Wednesday, and today in Chicago. They had all the coaches parade around, all the players parade around, and every reporter imaginable parade around. And we got one of those reporters today. We have someone from Spartan Shadows. Pretty much the guy sits next to me up there in the press box, and that is Emmett Matasovsky of Spartan Shadows. And we bring him in. Emmett, you just got home from Chicago. How was the drive home?
Drive home wasn't bad. I actually had to leave a little early from the final day of media days just to avoid all the Lollapalooza traffic because that starts today in Chicago.
I forgot about that too. Yeah.
Whoever designed that for the Big Ten needs to get dragged into a dark room and beaten with a stick or something because that was not fun to try to get out of. Personally, I think it was just so Coach Signetti could go and watch some Lollapalooza after media days wraps up. But no, traffic, it's usual. It's driving to and from Chicago.
If there's one Big Ten coach that's attending Lollapalooza in like Signetti. A dream team jersey, it's PJ Fleck.
No, it's Signetti, man.
I know it's Signetti, but he's going to be low key about it. PJ Fleck is going to be trying to get on stage wearing a Michael Jordan 9 USA jersey.
Fair enough.
So
yeah, no.
Let's
pump up that crowd to run through a wall with how he talked to the media day one. What was that, day one or day two to kick it off? Day two to kick off. He had that media pumped up, ready to run through a wall.
I guess so. I mean, so let's start it off. Let's just start off with Michigan State. So Pat Fitzgerald, he addressed the media and he played the Michigan State hits. It seemed like, we need to put toughness on tape. We don't have a chip on our shoulder. We have bags of chips on our shoulder. What was the impression? Because it feels like after the last 4 years, we don't need someone to win the press conference, but for this fan base, it's kind of nice that he's winning the press conferences.
Yeah, I would say after the last, especially I've been on the beat since the start of the Jonathan Smith era, it's nice to have a press conference where you feel like you are winning that press conference because Ryan, you can say it just as well as me, just going to those press conferences, those Monday morning press meetings, it's just a matter of didn't execute enough, didn't do enough, and you're not getting any of that toughness. You're not getting any of that rivalry. You're not getting really any emotion, any feeling, and I'm not going to say that that's the reason why Michigan State didn't have the most successful last 2 seasons, but that lack of energy at some point, you have to figure it will permeate a little through the building. That you got to be able to have that toughness and that mentality that Michigan State was built on. That chip on the shoulder, bag of chips on the shoulder, whatever you want to call it. Michigan State has to really have that mentality if they want to be successful. At least that's the blueprint that they've followed, and you either have to get back to that or find a new way. And with Mel Tucker and Johnson Smith, that really was not the case.
Yeah, it seems like, especially with football coaches and college football coaches with trying to bring in recruits, you have to have that little bit of car salesmanship, like personality, sure. Just because you're trying to mass appeal to hundreds of different kids, different personality types. So you kind of have to be able to fit in. And it's a little bit refreshing after, especially the last 2 years, even the Mel Tucker era, Mel Tucker was kind of like covering Matt Patricia, where when Matt Patricia lost a game, his post game, he would just tuck the microphone under his chin so you couldn't hear him as well. And then you just get hit with let's keep chopping.
Yeah.
So it's nice that Pat Fitzgerald is here. Was there anything interesting, or maybe you weren't expecting Pat Fitzgerald to say during his media availability yesterday?
I wouldn't say I was necessarily surprised by anything he said. I mean, he went and attacked the main points that you want from Michigan State. He attacked that, if there's one opponent I want to beat bad, it's Michigan. And that's really one thing you have to have after I didn't understand the rivalry being the headline of choice after the Michigan State game where there was a fight on the field post game in 2024. So you have to have that. You got quite a few bits of information revealed, such as the jersey number 1 being will be in use, but it's going to be decided the day before media gets access on August 6th for the first practice. But overall, you didn't have, like, I would say, anything that surprised me, but you did hit the points and you won that press conference, which is what you needed to have.
Right. And you're the one who kind of broke some news while you're there yesterday that 3 Spartans from the spring roster are off the fall roster. Just go into depth who these players were. Were they necessarily any impact players? And if you have any info on the situations of why they're gone, what happened?
Yeah, so I just asked and was able to confirm that they are not on the roster, but there was no additional information given. Defensive back Dorian Davis, wide receiver Atticus Carradine, and 1 second, blanking. I should really know this considering I was the one who broke the news. Wide receiver, defensive back, and then
let's see. I have your Twitter up. I'll just scroll down just a little bit. I have to scroll through all the Kyle Whittingham quotes. We'll touch on him in a second. And while we look up the that third Spartan, another Spartan kind of off of a roster transfer, and that's Chance Rucker. Has departed from Arizona State, and Dorian Davis, Luke DeJager, and Atticus
Edge Luke DeJager, yeah. So of those three, the only guy to see the field in game action during his time as a Spartan would be Dorian Davis. Davis played 7 snaps last year on defense during the Youngstown State game. Played 5 games on special teams and got a letter in 2024. Overall, none of them are necessarily huge losses, and I, in a way, expected a little bit of departure from the spring roster just because you had so many bodies coming in. You added Jameel Gardner Jr. You added Aiden Bull from the portal. You have guys coming in, and you have to have some guys filter out. And even with the designated student athlete rule, there are other rules in place where you might have to see players potentially get cut off the roster. Once again, I don't know. I could not confirm if they were cut from the roster or if they voluntarily left the program. I believe that the thing on Chance Rucker with Arizona State is he was dismissed. I could be wrong there, but that is the information I have on the players is just that they are no longer with the program, and that is all that was said on them.
They say that's probably all the info we get unless a player comes out and kind of voluntarily gives that information. And if they don't, it probably just means they were either cut or they just didn't like the fit through spring ball.
And I mean, of those guys, 2 of them, one of them the redshirt senior, one of them the redshirt junior, you have to figure they might have found an internship. They might have found a job or whatever and said, hey, you know, I have my career job in front of me. I've been on the practice squad for the last 2-3 years. I would rather focus on my career and furthering my own personal opportunities than having my body be sacrificed for the team every week. And you can't blame a guy for that because you have to do the best for yourself, whether it's in the professional field or on the athletic field.
Right. Understandably so. And so we talked about Pat Fitzgerald. He met with the media, fielded a bunch of questions. The players, Michigan State player representatives were Nakai Martinez, Allesio Miljevic, and Jordan Hall. And I know Spartan Nation appreciates Jordan Hall, but I feel like we also just somehow don't appreciate him enough. If that makes sense, just because the man's been through the bad years of Mel Tucker and then Jonathan Smith. And for him to hang around, it almost feels like he needs a lifetime achievement award just for what he's been through as a Spartan. Did he touch on that at all media days? I was kind of poking around. I was watching as much as I could, but with kids and youth sports starting back up, what did Jordan Hall have to say there in Chicago?
So because all the players were available at once, I was bouncing around everywhere. I did spend the majority of my time between Jordan Hall and Allesio's table. And I did also get a little bit of Nakai Martinez quotes in. But Jordan, one of the first questions, if not the first question he was asked is, So the transfer portal era, why stay? And he touched on that with, hey, between he didn't want to go into a different defense that he had to learn for his senior year. So the retention of Joe Rossi is huge there. And then just because he felt he had the tie, the connection, his faith, he prayed on it and decided that was ultimately the best decision for him. And then just I asked him, hey, you've gone through it. You've gone through 3 coaches at this point, 4 if you include the extra year, 4 if you include, the 2 hours of Joe Rossi being a head coach. And then you have you're bringing back Max Bulla, who has, the Spartan pride, bicep tattoos. What does it mean to you to be a Spartan? And he went on about how, it's someone who's giving their all every day, every chance you have for that team and making those sacrifices. And he actually went and touched on the departure of defensive tackle Alex Van Sumeren, who was actually representing USC at Media Days the day before that. And he said, someone like Alex, who went and gave his all, fought through multiple injuries, and ultimately went on to be a starter, play well. You can't hate, he is a guy who was a Spartan and is a Spartan. You can't take that away from him. And he's a guy that you can't blame him for going and taking the best opportunity in his eyes.
No, it's understood. I think most Michigan State fans have understood the football transfers over the last few years. Basketball is a whole different story that, we'll touch on in the later months. But I think anyone who's transferred out in the last 4 years for Michigan State football, everyone's been like,
yeah, you can't.
I get it.
Hard to blame them when you're going through. The coach that recruits you is getting fired 3 games into your career. The coach that took over and brought you in went and then, in a way, kind of put, like for Jordan Hall, went and basically made you a rotational player. You go from 500 snaps to 250 your first year. Then you get your opportunity to shine. You show off, but you go through turf toe at Nebraska, partially torn oblique against Minnesota. No, partially torn oblique against Michigan, fully tear it against Minnesota, and then you still keep coming out onto the field back for more punishment. You play your best game, at least according to PFF and based on how he impacted the field, against Minnesota when he tore his oblique mid-game. And you just have a guy that he just doesn't know the definition of quit and is going to keep giving his all for that team. And that's why, like, when Pat Fitzgerald said, we're going to vote with the leadership council and the coaches who best represents what it is to be the Spartan. And the Spartan really is going to be, the guy who's giving it all for the team, being the leader, doing it when no one's looking, doing it when people are looking, not changing the energy, and just absolutely striving for that team. And I think Jordan Hall, your shoe-in candidate, he is going to be the guy that gets the opportunity to change his jersey number to 1 if he wants to, which is in the way what Pat Fitzgerald said for that guy's going to get the chance to wear the 1. If he doesn't want it, he's going to get a helmet sticker that has the number 1 on it for being the Spartan. And I think I literally turned to my co-coverage, Matt Eichstadt, and said, oh, so the Jordan Hall Award, because Jordan Hall represents it.
Yeah, pretty much. And to have Max Bulla here for that final year, it's just
for sure.
It's going to feel a little hopefully feel a little deja vu-ish just with the style of play. He said you were bouncing between, Nikai a little bit and Allesio. What was kind of the main focus in that pit with Allesio at the table?
So Allesio, I walked in for about the final 10, so a lot of the main writers had gotten their questions in and everything, but you got a little backstory, a little being back at home for him because he's a Naperville native. That's 1 hour outside of Chicago.
And he claims Naperville. He claims he doesn't say Chicago. I saw that part. He'll never claim Chicago unless he's overseas because it's easier.
Yeah, it would be like a kid. It would be like East Lansing kid. Like I'm trying to think, Sam Edwards, for example. And media days are in Detroit. It would be a situation like that where you're basically in a way it's back home, but at the same time you're close enough. But no, just overall, Allesio got to tell a little bit of a fun story about how he played hockey growing up, which definitely explains the toughness factor. If you know a hockey player, they're going to get absolutely beaten, bruised, battered, and they're not going to show it till after the season's over. And Allesio, 6 sacks his first half as a starter, He's another guy. He doesn't know the definition of quit. You look at like his first 2 throws in the college level were interceptions. And he goes back and then leads a touchdown drive the next time he's called upon 5 games later. He's just a guy that goes and will do his job, and he's not going to complain. He's not going to pout if he's getting hit and beat up. And even I believe Nikai or Jordan touched on and said, yeah, he's going to get hit and he's going to get up clapping and fired up because he got hit. So in a way, if he's a quarterback that he's kind of your defensive end, defensive tackle, wired a little differently.
Kind of like that Phillip Rivers style of just clapping, gets up clapping and just going, woo!
Yeah, he's going to be the guy that he will just go after. And then like he was talking about, so he was asked, you played hockey. What were your favorite moments? And he goes and mentions playing at the United Center. I know you're probably watching this and you're a Red Wings fan, so you can boo and hiss right here. But getting to play during the intermission at a Blackhawks game. And then his other one was, so I had a game where I had 3 goals, so a hat trick, 3 penalties, one of which was a fight. We weren't allowed to fight. We were 11 years old, but I fought anyways.
So he had 2/3 of the Gordie Howe hat trick. So.
Yeah, he did. He said 0 assists, but he almost had it though.
Yeah, if there's any more reason to kind of ding Allesio, one of his NIL deals, he is a Chicago White Sox athlete.
But if you hate on him, you have to hate on Jeremy Fears, and I don't think you're going to find anyone who cheers on Michigan State in those 2 sports who's going to hate on Fears.
Right. And as for Alessio's toughness, I touched on this, I think it was last week in an episode. I think the numbers were released of like QBR rating under pressure of expected starters this year, and Allesio was number 2 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and you look at it, and it's like, wait, that's his same. You look at it, and you almost like that's almost the exact same quarterback rating he had last year, and that's because he was under pressure the entire time.
Right, and to kind of bring it full circle, the quarterback that was ranked 18th, dead last in the Big Ten was Aiden Childs. And once again, Aiden's still another guy that you can't really blame because you're a mobile quarterback, but that doesn't mean that you should have to get used to getting hit 5 times a game. You shouldn't have to, because he's not designated rollouts on every play, but it looked like the entire playbook was designated rollouts at points last year. Yeah, it was a tough beat, and that's one thing I'm excited for about this season. I know Pat Fitzgerald hammered on this point during the week as well, is how different the offensive line actually looks because of the transfer portal. You have Morawski, you have Sharp, and he said, I believe you broke the news that Fraley's going to be the starting center.
Yep.
And then you have Sinich, and then you have Connor Moore.
And then you have Rakeem Johnson, a really promising piece. He was trusted upon to speak to media before any other offensive lineman, which is crazy that you have your redshirt sophomore going out there and speaking to media. Rakeem's got to start at left tackle against Ohio. I want to say it was Ohio State as a true freshman going into his 4th career game as a summer enrollee. So you have the talent at that offensive line that you didn't have. You have the depth. Fitzgerald said, hey, we got 10 or 11 guys that are going to be competing to play. And I don't know how much it means that they're competing to play. Competing could mean, for all we know, they're suiting up for practice, and we have 5 offensive linemen that aren't healthy.
Right, because that was also a different story of the last few years where it felt like we might have had 6 healthy offensive linemen after like week 2. And now it seems that the guys that we do remember, Rakeem Johnson, Rustin Young, like those guys, like, hey, they were starters for us. They moved across the whole line, and now they're in that fill-in spot. And
you have to remember, you have a 4-star Colin Campbell, who was top 200 kid in the country. You have him on campus now too, and you don't have that redshirt rule anymore. You have a 5-5, so you can get sparing snaps of Colin Campbell. You can go and give Luka a break. You can go and give Rustin a break. Give Ben Morawski a break on special teams extra point, and send in Colin Campbell, who he can take those hits where you're pile driving everyone into the line on an extra point trying to block it. And I think that's going to be very beneficial because you're not burning a red shirt to have some if LeVar Woods trusts the guys enough to play special teams, you are going to have these guys to take the hits and give those guys rest, give those guys an extra 30 seconds, 1 minute to recover. And that's going to add up throughout the season, in my opinion.
And you mentioned his name, LeVar Woods, because Pat Fitzgerald was asked directly about LeVar Woods and the impact of what that will make for Michigan State. What is the true impact, and how long will he actually be in East Lansing? Because he seems like, around college football, that he's probably going to be a head coaching candidate soon.
That's my concern on him. And I think he's in East Lansing as long as Kirk Ferentz is in Iowa City, is my honest take on it. I think that he's going to be on that short list of candidates if Kirk Ferentz elects to retire. That LeVar Woods is going to be one of those first interviews. But I do think he's going to want to stay at least 2-3 years to really prove himself, because you have to factor this is his first time in the assistant head coach role, and he has to go and be a part of this team's rebirth and turnaround. And if you really think Pat Fitzgerald is the guy for it, which he does, he left his cushy position in Iowa City to go and be with the Spartans. You have to figure they're going to really be there 2-3 years. And what the impact of him is, I mean, there's a reason why whenever we mention the failures of the Jonathan Smith era, just look at that Iowa game. Look at the final 7 minutes of that Iowa game. Special teams falls apart. I mean, we've had one of the things that was really unacceptable to me during the Jonathan Smith tenure was a Sam Edwards gaffe that happened twice in 2 years. Was Edwards would go and wave for a fair catch when his return man wanted to take it. So Michigan State would automatically get the ball at the 5-yard line because of a disconcerting signals penalty. And one of those turned into a pick six, and the other one turned into a 3-and-out that turned into a touchdown drive. So you look at that, that's, it's 14 points over 2 years, but that was those games that it happened at, you might ask. Minnesota last year, which was a overtime loss, Boston College 2024, which was a 4-point loss in a monsoon.
Yeah.
So look at that. That is my evidence right there. You flip those two games, and Jonathan Smith is coaching the team this year. So you have to realize those special teams gaffes and stuff are part of why LeVar Woods is a guy that he can go and trot out Rakeem Johnson at punt returner, and I won't bat an eye. Week 1, if Rakeem Johnson goes to return a punt, I'm not going to even question it because LeVar Woods is that talented of a coach. You have to just trust that process.
Those offensive linemen can move too. We'll hey, let's
Antonio
see.
Johnson's going to return a punt this year, and everyone's going to clap, okay?
Hey, I would love to see it. So touch out LeVar Woods. Let's just talk about the defense in general, because one of my concerns is this defense, mainly defensive line depth. It's a huge issue. I mean, I can't even single out a position on the defensive line because both edge and D tackle, they're thin. It's very thin, and to play in the Big Ten, that's one. It doesn't matter how many stars you got. It's I feel like you just need 15 guys to get through the season, and Michigan State's hurting in that position.
Yeah, that is definitely my concern too, with just that. You look at this defensive line, you have Ben Roberts who's back, but Ben Roberts has dealt with injuries each of his 2 years in East Lansing. He has slimmed down 10 pounds before the season with the summer camp. He has dropped 10 pounds, I believe it was, when I looked back at the spring roster. So potentially more muscle, a little more lean, because he was, I believe, tied for one of the heaviest players on roster last year. And then you go and look at edge position. You have Anu Lafayette, but he's coming back off of a lower body injury. He was in a non-contact jersey for the entire spring ball. Trey Lyle, a transfer who's kind of a project player, he was in a non-contact injury. He was in a non-contact jersey. You have Leonard Ayu bumping down, but he only played special teams last year. So there's just a lot of guys that you have a bunch of question marks. You don't really have a bunch of proven production. That's when a guy who Ezekiel Durham Campbell at one point was committed to go to Michigan State before another bag went his way. And he was one of those guys that I believe that there was even a pat signal sent out for him. And then between him and his agent, there was something that happened there. and he's now playing ball elsewhere. And Durham Campbell had 5.5 sacks last year. That's just something you don't have production. And Kenny Torres Jr. is a guy that is going to be impressing everyone, but that's one position. Defensive tackle, Eli Cohen, Ben Roberts, Mike Schonbeeler,
and Derek Simmons.
Yeah, you kind of have that group, but really between them, like you have one good Ben Roberts game, and then Eli Cohen had a good impact game. But Derek Simmons kind of got lost in the shuffle. That's why they redshirted him last year. And Mike Schonbeeler, he dealt with injuries and then really didn't make much of an impact. And then you just look at it. Keenis Thompson, I guess, is in that group too. You just don't have proven production. And Kenny Torres, going to be good, don't get me wrong. But they said we looked at his linebacker tape and bumped him down to edge. I mean, look at freshman year. Jordan Hall had really good blitzing packages and everything. They moved him out to that edge position for about 10 snaps a game a couple years back, 2025 when it was, 2024 when it was the Jordan Turner, Cal Halliday show. And it did not work very well. So that's just a concern.
Another position group, they said that's not a lot of production, but for us Spartans fans, it's almost in Courtney Hawkins we trust is that wide receiver group. Because all that's there is Krishan McCray. For returning production, that's it.
Hey, so there's one Charles Taplin catch too, and one Bryson Williams catch. We have we have two other returning catches, to be fair.
It's to be fair, but I think for us Spartan fans, I think we are just leaning into Courtney Hawkins can do it. Like he can coach someone up, but who do you think is going to step into those other two starting spots at wide receiver? Because we know McCray will probably be in the slot position, but who will be the outside guys?
So I think you're probably going to see like a KK Smith to start the season for sure. It might be a little early to anoint Samson Gash, but at some point you have to look at the overall talent, and Samson Gash had the highest upside of anyone in that room. Now look at like the FAU game in 2024. Nick Marsh plays 10 snaps. He comes in the next week, goes off for 9 catches, 189 yards, whatever the heck it was at that point. So I think Samson Gash will probably end the season as a starter. But week one, it's just going to you're going to play a lot of guys. And that's what Pat Fitzgerald went and hinted at, that we're going to play a lot of guys. And it's going to be especially with, we don't have that roster. We don't have that cap of, we have to determine if we're shutting this guy down after 4 games or not. You can rotate it through a bunch of guys and figure out who works. I would say Braylon Collier is the guy to watch. He has the athletic catches. Just if you watch some of those pregame catches that he's making, it's insane. And I do think he has some really underrated route running ability. I know he suffered through some injuries last year, which is part of why he wasn't on the travel roster as much as you would think, is because of that. Fell a little on the depth chart behind Charles Taplin, Bryson Williams. I think Taplin is going to be a guy that surprises a lot of people. Bryson Williams gaining another 10 pounds of muscle. That is definitely something interesting to monitor. He gained 10 pounds between spring and summer ball roster. So I think you have a lot of interesting bodies. Frederick Moore's in that list too, but I don't know. Frederick Moore's not a guy I'm necessarily sold on, I would say, which it's not even he's from the school down the road. It's just,
if you look at his numbers, it's like he looked to transfer because he wasn't playing. Like, so
yeah.
Where you bring in those, those Power 5 guys that just were riding the bench, it's like, yes, they are talented, but when you're not playing for 2 or 3 years, what are you now?
I'm not trying to hate on a kid that hasn't taken a snap from Michigan State. Don't get me wrong. But when you go and hit the transfer portal and leave the team before the season even is over, before the season even has hit conference play, I'm just concerned there that how does that fit into the culture that Pat Fitzgerald is trying to build in East Lansing? And then I think a tell there is you're going and acquiring Jamil Gardner. Like, why would you go and acquire another receiver that has a little more proven production if you don't have concern about what's in your room? And I'm not trying to be negative here. There's just concern there. Why do you have Coach Hawkins going and signing off and bringing in another receiver? And I mean, look at like I want to say Fred Moore, Collier, Kaplan, and then those guys, 3 guys who should be competing for that starting role. I believe they combined for 1 target during the entire spring game, which, yes, they ran a very vanilla playbook. But at the same time, when you have 3 guys going combined for 1 target, that is a concern if you're expected to be among the starters, because yes, Michigan State secondary looks revamped and looks improved, but I'm not going to go and say if you put Michigan State secondary against the 12 secondaries we're facing this year, I'm not going to go and say that they're top 14, top 3, top 4.
Right.
I might rank them 5th best among secondaries we're playing this year.
So you look at different projections, or if you've done your own projection, it's like part of, our starting, back, like the starting backs is the ghost of Chuck Brantley.
Yes.
And like, that's where we're at, where we feel good because of the name and because of the highlight from 2021. But it's like, what are we really getting there?
His 2024 was very good. His 9 games in 2024 were very good. He was basically a lockdown corner.
Right.
Even against Ohio State, I believe he allowed 2 catches, 12 yards that night. The other corners were getting 8 and alive, don't get me wrong. But it was like, Brantley's good, but at the same time, after he got injured against Indiana in 2024, he's seen the field for 1 game since then because of various injuries. He missed all the spring ball for injury. So how healthy is Chuck Brantley? How long would Chuck Brantley be healthy? Is a headline that this team has to wonder about.
Right. And we've talked a lot about Michigan State. Maybe if there's one person that maybe we haven't touched on, who's one guy that maybe Spartan fans, maybe don't know yet or haven't thought about, that might be a surprise here in 2026?
So I'd say one guy that you don't really talk about a ton, and I think will make noise. I'm going to say linebacker Caleb Wheatland is going to be my pick for. I think he's going to be taking the Lions' share of snaps alongside Jordan Hall, and I think he's going to impress. Wheatland is a guy that you look at his film, especially against Michigan State. Whenever MSU went and played Maryland, because he went to Maryland, went to Auburn for a season, went to Michigan State. Whenever MSU went and played Maryland, Caleb Wheatland was a menace on the field. I think he had something. It feels like 18 career tackles, 5 for loss, 2.5 sacks in his 2 games against MSU. So I do think it's like 2 sacks and then like 4 tackles for loss and 10 tackles, but still.
It's still impressive.
He makes an impact, and that's Big Ten level play. And I know it wasn't the most talented Michigan State teams he played with the 2023 and 2024 iterations, but that's still Big Ten caliber players.
Right. And you look at Michigan State's schedule this year, it's like we're playing all of those middle tier type teams, like especially right after Notre Dame, you have that stretch of, was it Nebraska, Illinois, Northwestern, and who am I forgetting? But like it's
UCLA, maybe.
UCLA's right after. There's one Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's the road game of the 4. But it's like you look at those 4 games, it's like those are the ones where you need those impact plays, because those are 4 winnable games right there. I'm not saying MSU's going 4-0, but like that's the season defining moment is games 4 through 7. Because previous years, I looked through the numbers last week, like in previous years, like that's when the season just went awry, was after, the preseason schedule ended or the non-conference schedule ended. Michigan State, I think, has like 2 wins of the last 4 years in weeks 4 through 8.
Yeah. And to be fair, that 2024 slate was absolutely brutal.
Right.
Because you had, I want to say it was 4 teams that were preseason top 25, because it was Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan back when they had a defensive line full of 1st and 2nd round picks, and then Iowa, which Michigan State pulled off a win against Iowa, which is one of those 2 wins weeks 4 through 8. But yeah, that 2024 slate was brutal. But 2025, that was a lot of games that should be coin flips, and none of them really turned into coin flips. You kind of had your end of the season signs of life for Minnesota and Iowa, but it was just lifeless football last year, which was really damning of the team, because if you're coming out, when you really look at it, you win one game and then you have Iowa, Minnesota, Maryland, you find a way to win 2 of those, you go to a bowl game.
Right. And
And
that's where the bowl game
got killed every week, it felt like.
Right. And that's where the bowl game lies this year, is those 4 games. Yep. Is that somehow, like, if whatever the final record is to reach the bowl, whether it's 6 wins or all the way up to 8 wins, got to come out of that with a winning record.
I was about to say, you got to at least find a way to get 2 in that. If you can find a way to get 2, you have those 2, the MAC schools, and then like between UCLA, Rutgers to end the season, and then who knows what could happen against Michigan. It's kind of that wild card game, because you have a lot of talent. You have a lot of talent on one side, and you have, I would say, a team that has a better grasp of the rivalry on the other. You don't know what's going to happen there. I do think Michigan should be favored by 2 touchdowns in that game, but it's been one of those weird games where 2020 we all thought Michigan State was going to lose by 28 points, and they go and win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I didn't even have 28. I thought it was going to be a slaughter. I mean, when I made predictions, I just copped out and said the final score would be 3-2, just because I was protecting my own feelings. I was like, we're going to get a baseball game. Like, I don't know.
I've had worse predictions. I had a 63-3 prediction last year for the Indiana game, so I get it.
Yeah, and just to touch on this too, we have that Oregon game this year at home. It's a Friday night. Jeff Schwartz, who played at Oregon, played in the NFL, was NFL analyst. He's actually calling that like the game to watch for Oregon, because it's 7 straight games for Oregon, then going into a short week, flying across the country. I don't think he's saying like Oregon's going to lose, but it's more of that game's not going to be.
If Dante Moore left his shoulder and Corey Parrish missed the flight, then you might have a chance.
Right. I think it's just more, it's not going to be the beatdown that Oregon fans think it's going to be, because it is like the end of their peak of their schedule, and they're playing on a short week across the country. So it's more of like,
you're playing a team on senior day too, but it's like, I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, and what has senior day been in East Lansing the last few years?
I'm very upset that it is Jordan Hall senior day that has to be the Friday night game.
Right.
That kind of rubs me the wrong way, I'm not going to lie, but no, I don't know. I think that Oregon still probably wins that comfortably by 21-28.
Right. I mean, but even a couple years ago when we were in Oregon, like, I mean, we had the sad cover at the end of the game with the field goal, but like Oregon was like tripping over themselves. Like they were keeping Michigan State in the game.
Yeah, I was about to say Oregon threw back-to-back picks to Brantley and Malik Spencer, but
right.
And then still found a way to put up 38 points.
Yes. They still say Michigan State covered. Just saying.
Yeah, Michigan State covered via Jonathan Kim field goal.
Yeah, a sad cover at the end of the game. All right. Yeah, so we've talked about the other teams. You were at Big Ten Media Days, all 3 days. Who's one coach that maybe stood out, or one coach you're looking forward to hearing speak that maybe you haven't seen yet or seen in a couple of years?
So I was excited to listen to Whittingham speak. Kyle Whittingham, the new Michigan head coach, because he's just, he's a guy that he's a West Coast person. So I'm very interested to see how he sounds compared to, say, Jonathan Smith, because he was another guy that West Coast really didn't transplant well. And it was a concern today, because some of the quotes he said, people were pulling up exact quotes from Jonathan Smith's media sessions, and it looks bar for bar, word for word.
Yeah, I think one of his concerning quotes was mainly about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry.
That hates a strong word.
Hates a strong word, but I did find it interesting, his quotes on the Michigan State rivalry. I think it upset a lot of people in Ann Arbor, where he's like, yeah, I think this one might be as important as the other one.
Yeah, that is going to make it very, very hard for the people that say, Oh yeah, Michigan State's like Michigan's fourth biggest rival, trying to rage bait the Spartan fans, because when you have your coach going and saying that, it's really indefensible to try to say, no, Michigan State's the fourth biggest rival, and you're going to piss off the people who love Ohio State and who love that Ohio State rivalry, because you have your coach going and saying, well, in-state supremacy matters too, because I mean, part of that comes from he's a Utah head coach. Utah and BYU have the Holy War, and that's really viewed as Utah's biggest rivalry. And I guess that was a private concern I had for Pat Fitzgerald potentially not understanding the rivalry, because Northwestern doesn't really have. When you think Northwestern, the last thing you think of is what schools are they rivals with, because you just don't think that about Northwestern.
Right. You think their rival is the compliance department of getting kids into Northwestern.
Absolutely.
Like, that's their biggest rival. But the one thing I didn't worry about Pat Fitzgerald is just understanding the magnitude of these Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
Because,
for sure. And I don't
he lived it for 30 years.
Yeah. And I don't know if Whittingham had that. And I would say another coach that was really fun to talk to, I wouldn't necessarily say like I was interested to hear speak, because I knew he was already a fun guy to listen to at press conferences. Brett Bielema, Illinois head coach. I could listen to that guy give a 2-hour presentation. It was, if I'm picking one guy that maybe I don't want to be in the Michigan State media room after a football game this year, it's probably Bielema in Illinois. I would probably go and sneak in on that one, have someone else cover the Michigan State one, because he's just a lot of fun to talk to. I mean, I asked him about Luke Altmaier to get some stuff out for Lions on Sports Illustrated with John Macron. So I go and ask him a little bit about Luke Altmaier. He goes and tells a 3-minute story about him and about his draft day, everything like that, which was a lot of fun.
Right. And Bielema is kind of, as of now in the Big Ten, like the elder statesman.
He is the voice of the Big Ten at this point. He's the guy that goes and represents them at a bunch of conferences and stuff.
That's what I said. I was listening to an interview with Luke Fickell today, and he was explaining how Bielema is the guy that sends all the Big Ten coaches like all the rules updates, what they need to know. Like he's kind of the leader of the conference when it comes to keeping everyone else updated what's going on in the world. And Whittingham was really interesting today. That I don't know if Michigan, I mean, who knows if Michigan fans were paying attention.
Depending on how the next few seasons go, that is going to be the sign of when everything, you might see that mentioned as the sign of when everything went wrong.
Right.
Another quote I found fascinating from him, which I tweeted out, was when he was asked about how do you clear some of those distractions, the Sharon Moore incident. Not really going to touch more on that because I'm sure it's been blown up and everyone's seen what I'm talking about with Sharon Moore. Determine your own feelings and what happened there on it. But he was asked, how quickly can you clear that distraction? And he's like, honestly, the distraction itself was not that, it's hard to really say that the locker room's going to be distracted from it, because it's not the players going and doing something wrong. It's not the players had a conduct thing that we're going to have to discipline their teammate, etc. It was the adults in the room that had the problem. 100%. And he's not wrong.
Right.
And
when I saw that, when you tweeted that quote out, I was like, at least there's now an adult in that room. Like,
for sure.
Like, as much as, I don't like U of M and want to see their downfall, like, at least there's an adult, like, saying, like, hey, it's not, these kids weren't doing anything. It wasn't our fault. It wasn't their malfeasance. But like you say, it will be interesting to play out because, we kind of lived this simulation just a couple of years ago of a coach who built up a really nice West Coast program, was very comfortable there, comes over here and just seems fish out of water.
Yeah.
And, obviously Whittingham has a lot more of a pedigree than Jonathan Smith ever did. But,
you just have to be concerned because Whittingham is directly tied into that Urban Meyer tree. So then, with the amount of emphasis you go and place on Michigan, Ohio State, if you're a Michigan fan, if you're a Michigan donor, if you're a Michigan board of trustee guy, Michigan athletic director, when you have a guy that is willing to speak favorably and praise the former Ohio State coach, even though at the end of the day, that's your, coach, that's your guy that you learned under, that's just going to be a concern and a distraction, which that's how college football rivalries are. It's petty, sometimes nonsensical, but here it is.
Right. I mean, try to make us all sane for a day. That can't happen, especially now these days in college athletics with everything going on. So from here, Emmett, we will wrap up. Thank you for joining us today, Emmett Matasovsky at _. You can see the last name right there. I'm not going to spell it out. 57. You can follow him on Twitter. This man he's your recruiting database for Michigan State. I have seen the spreadsheets this man has. So if you want to keep up on Michigan State recruiting, just follow Emmett. You will learn everything you need to know. And appreciate you flying in from Chicago. Not literally, just I think you had a DeLorean. I think you just
honestly that would have been nice to avoid some of that traffic.
So appreciate your time. This has been Michigan State Spartans Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Ryan Elke. We're live every Tuesday and Thursdays here at 9 p.m. We're live on YouTube. We're live on the Voice of College Football Facebook page. You can follow me at RyanEL_Key. We'll be back Tuesday, 9 p.m. Go Green.
Go White.